Group ought to be fully self-supporting. Declining outside contributions. This time we'll now pass the basket. This is a weekly step meeting. Our format is as follows. Our speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on that step of the week, followed by discussion or questions until 7. And you can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting. On this day, Monday, January 15th, 2024, in Doylestown, PA, at the Monday night, 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Tom, and he'll be sharing his experience on steps 6 and 7. Please help me welcome Tom.
Putting on a timer. Hi, my name is Tom. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Tom.
Thanks for asking me to speak tonight. I thought I was coming in to speak on 8 and 9, and then I got a text message saying, "Hey, you ready for 6 and 7?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what we're on." Completely forgot. It's all good. I'm ready. I'm ready for all of it. Yeah, step 6 and 7. It's funny when I read the big book, and there's so much stuff devoted to every other steps, all the other steps in the book, and 6 has one paragraph and 7 has one paragraph in the whole book. And I always found that very interesting, just because it's when I was doing my step work, and I got to step 6. My sponsor, he told me, like, this is, like, you thought you were doing work before. He's like, this is the work that you're going to have to do day in and day out, one day at a time, to change the person that you were who walked into these rooms. And I remember when I did 4 and 5, like 4 was just not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And 5, and sitting with my sponsor and talking about, all the parts of me that I didn't know existed, seeing all the fears, seeing all the jealousy, the resentments, the anger, and trying to understand all that stuff about me that was just blocking me from being a better person. And then, get to the end of 5, and my sponsor's like, well, it's time to do something about that now, right? Like, you just found out all these things that you don't like about yourself. Now what? You can't just keep them there. You can't just live with that. That's how you got where you are in the first place. It was like I was selfish all the time. I was dishonest all the time. Like, I didn't know how to be a selfless person. I didn't know how to be an honest person. I didn't know how to think about other people. I couldn't grasp my mind around that stuff. Like, when I was out there and I was drinking and I was living that alcoholic life, I was a liar, a cheat, a thief. I couldn't function without hurting people. And it didn't even matter that I was doing it because I just drowned everything away with alcohol. When I got to step 6 and step 7, it was like, are you ready to stop living that way? Are you ready to actually try to be honest? To try to be thoughtless and, like, think about other people and try to be humble in the way you live your life? I was like, yes, I want to do those things. I just don't know how to do them. And he's like, well, that's what we have step 6, and then we have step 7. If you're ready for that, that's step 6. If you want to do something about it, step 7, ask God, because these things about you can't remove them. They're too powerful. Like, you are a selfish person, and the only way to get rid of that is to ask God to remove that of it from you. You have to be willing to do that. And he said step 6 was all about willingness. You have to be willing. You have to be ready. You have to want to get to live a lifestyle that is the opposite of the way you were living. He used to say, he's like, this is the George Costanza step. That's what he told me. He's like, this is the opposite George step. If every instinct you had was wrong, then the opposite must be right. Like, but it was true. It was like, if I would go to work and I was like waiting tables and stuff, and I would steal money and I would steal tips and I would live this lifestyle just to get by, it was like, how was I going to function in a world where I couldn't do that? You know, like that thought of that way was a little bit difficult. I didn't know how to be an honest worker. You know, like even when I first started the job that I have now, that I like was able to get in sobriety, like I went to this job and I just sat there for 8 hours a day and did absolutely nothing, out of complete fear and all kinds of stuff. I'm sitting there stealing time, stealing money. I didn't know how to be an honest worker. You know, I couldn't be. I didn't know how to be selfless. Like I was constantly about what am I going to get out of this, you know? And it's like, if I wasn't selfish, like how am I going to get what I want? You know, I want things. How do I get them? I only know how to look after me, you know? That part of living that way always drove me to all the other things that I identified in that fourth step. You know, all the angers, all the fears, all the resentments, all the pain I caused, all the people who hurt me because I hurt them because I was this fearful person and selfish person. You know, all that stuff. Live that way. You know, I had no choice but to drown everything out with alcohol. And I can't live that way anymore. So it was like, are you ready for this? Are you willing to do it? Yeah. Then let's take a very simple step. It's simple but hard. You're going to say, you know, we say the prayer, and he sat me down. We said the prayer in here. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect or character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. You know, seventh step, saying that prayer, asking God to remove all these things from me so that I can be a better person. But you also said something I've heard many times from my mom, from my dad, you know, God helps those who help themselves. You know, I don't have the strength to remove the selfishness from me, but I do have the strength, willingness to go out and be selfless. I have to practice the opposite George. I had to go out there and start living honestly to the best of my ability one day at a time. To be living selflessly to the best of my ability one day at a time. If I put enough of those days together of practicing this to the best of my ability, I slowly start to stop living the way I used to be living and start living the opposite way. And little by slowly, that change starts to occur, and I'm not the person today that I was when I walked in. You know, I'm not perfect by any means. I still am dishonest from time to time. I still am fearful. I still am selfish. You know, those things still exist inside me, and I can still act on those. But it's not how I live the majority of my life anymore. You know, I was at a meeting the other day, and there was a question like, what is your concept of a higher power? You know, what is that to you? You know, and I always thought, like, to me, something I heard in a meeting was my relationship with God was like me and God in a rowboat, and I'm rowing and God's steering. And God will let me steer anytime I want, but he won't row. You know, I have to put in all that effort, and I have to trust that God's going to take me in the right direction. So when I'm saying this prayer and I'm saying, give me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding, I'm basically saying, all right, I'm committed to rowing. I'm going to do all the rowing from here on out. You're in charge of where we go. You know, give me the strength to be able to do that. And so every day is a practice for me. Every day, 6 and 7, just practicing to be the opposite of the way I was, a little bit at a time, one day at a time, to the best of my ability, to try to change the person I was. You know, come around here long enough, keep doing this stuff, and changes you. Changed me. I know that. I know how I was when I was out there. I know how I was when I came in. I know how I was years into sobriety until I'd gotten through these steps, you know. But this is where that big change of who I was to who I'm going to be starts. And, you know, this is where I started to see real differences. This is when people started to see differences in me, you know. This is where I started to be a different person to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world treated me as that person instead of the way I was. And that feels good, you know. It feels good to not be looked at like a thief, you know, to be looked at like a selfish person. And again, it's practice every day. I can take back control of that boat anytime. God says, go ahead. It's your choice. You got free will. You can jump back and try to steer this ship. But you know where you lead it every single time, right into the rocks, you know. So if you want to go back to being dishonest, selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, go ahead. You know where you're going to end up. You know, you only have one way of doing that. You know, but if you want to navigate this world and stop hurting people and yourself, then you put out there, you do that work, and let God steer that boat. Thanks.
Okay, please limit your sharing to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking or if you had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. And now the floor is now open for sharing.